Right now, I want to welcome from Mediaite, Noah Rothman. Noah, how you doing, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good talking to you again. And we were discussing your piece yesterday, actually, on the program, the ugly mindset that led the Denver Post to sanitize the political beliefs of the shooter at Arapahoe High School. And you know, this is it's kind of a complex story, Noah, because look, on the one hand, there are a lot of folks who say, look, why are we even getting into the political beliefs of someone who is, pretty clearly deranged? But the fact of the matter is the Denver Post did start reporting on what this gentleman's political beliefs are. We know that this is sort of a game that the media likes to play, or a fascination that the media has. But, inevitably, when the reality doesn't fit the stereotype that a lot of media members have, the story kind of disappears. In this case, we actually saw the Denver Post engage in some stealth editing of the individual's political beliefs.
Yeah, the Post wasn't alone in this. There was an Associated Press story that also delved into the political beliefs of this individual. It was such apparently that his political belief, he was so outspoken about his political beliefs that most of the students who recalled him remember him being an outspoken, left-leaning political activist.
Look, the words that were used were communist, self-described socialist. He used to wear Soviet T-shirts all the time. It wasn't just he was a left-leaning activist. This guy apparently was a hardcore, socialist out there.
Right. And, yeah, clearly. And the Denver Post editor took it upon herself to edit a source's quote, not even just copy, and a direct quote, edit it stealthily, not make that correction. And when confronted about it on Twitter by just a reader, she said that it was her opinion, and likely the opinion of her editorial staff, that they wanted to remove a quote label the student likely didn't even understand, unquote, suggesting that she's making an editorial judgment about whether or not the philosophy of socialism, as complicated, as complex as it is, could possibly be comprehended by a young student, and the negative implications that her readers could draw, implications that she didn't want them drawing. So she made the decision to edit that post in a way that she believed would more accurately convey an impression to her readers that she thinks is appropriate. That's dangerous.
Well, it is, particularly when, if you go and you look at what the other students were saying there. Look, editors are going to make these judgment calls. I think it was a wrong judgment call. I think pretty clearly, based on what these other students were saying, this student did know what he was talking about. This really was the political leaning of this individual. And if you thought that it was important enough to originally ask and report on it, you shouldn't run away from the responses and from the truth. And the fact, I have a sneaking suspicion, Noah, that if this individual had liked to walk around with Gadsden flag T-shirts instead of, let's say, Soviet-style T-shirts, and if a student had said, well, this guy was a pretty hardcore libertarian, do you think the Denver Post editor would have said, well, I'm not sure this student really knows what that means. We better just kind of vague this up a little bit.
Yeah, very difficult to posit a negative and then prove it, obviously. But yeah, it is pretty hard to envision somebody who is a free market activist who is a disciple of Hayek, and then an editor going out and saying, well, this is an absurdly complex philosophy that a student couldn't possibly grasp. They would probably believe that it was in fact just the opposite, and indicative of a philosophy that shows youth. So, but again, we can't prove that being the case. But we wouldn't be asking these questions if the editor hadn't taken upon herself to make this judgment call and then bring this firestorm of controversy down on them. I think it's totally appropriate and totally deserved. The editor should not have made this decision to stealthily edit. And again, it was an edit that they didn't account for. If this was so justified, why not enter an italicized note under the post saying why the edit was done clearly and succinctly? They didn't do that because there was no justification for the edit. It was completely a personal whim. So it was very inappropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and as you say it is necessary to state for the record that a deranged lunatic's political beliefs do not, outside of a declared terrorist action have anything to do with their murderous actions. It's a sad commentary on modern state of affairs that this assertion must even be clarified, but you're right, no, it does have to be pointed out. But no one forced the Denver Post to examine the shooter's political beliefs, you write. They engaged in this process, honestly, and then when their editors didn't like what they discovered, sanitized their own findings. You know, this isn't even the first time that we've seen this. Christopher Dorner, Noah, do you remember Christopher Dorner's a manifesto?
Well, I sure do.
And again, there was, you know, the twisted thing was at the time, I remember seeing a lot of people on Twitter who were actually tweeting, you know, this guy's kind of crazy, but I think he's got a point about gun control.
Yeah, he was an avowed Chris Matthews fan. A fact that actually Mr. Matthews touted on the air without even a hint of humility or a little embarrassment.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was among one of many low points.
Wow, did it give him a tingle?
It was kind of hard to tell at the time, and unfortunately, I'm glad I don't know, and I won't be speculating.
Yeah. You know, you say that this case was among the more egregious examples of a media outlet shedding its credibility in service to a narrative. Do you think there's anybody within the Post, and do you think there's anybody within the larger media? First of all, I'm kind of curious. I know you wrote about this. Charles Cook has written about this. A lot of readers picked up on this, and a lot of online folks noticed this over the weekend. But among the media, has there been any discussion? Has Pointer.org written anything about the Denver Post's stealth editing? Has there been any soul-searching or navel-gazing about how the media acted on Friday?
I haven't seen any, but that just might be my own ignorance. I just simply haven't seen it. I can't say whether or not it doesn't exist, but I think I would have come across it if it had. We've gotten to a point now where, and Gabe Mailer over at Ace of Spades did a great post, putting together the at least 12 incidents in the last 5 years, since 2009, where conservatives have been reflexively attacked in the immediate wake of violence, often as violence is ongoing, for inciting these actions. It's never been proven to be the case. Every time the person who engages in that kind of speculation is embarrassed. So nobody's done it recently, overtly. But there is a lot of kind of covert attempts to make these accusations, or at least de-emphasize links to the alternative, which is when shooters have a left-leaning point of view, as in Dorner's case, as in this case. So the narrative survives, even though it's never been really fully proven. It's just kind of serviced and kept alive by people like this Denver Post editor who refuse to let certain inconvenient facts sully the impression that she wants to leave, which is that violence is a province exclusively of the right.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I noticed the one of the phrasings, I think in the early reporting on this Denver Post story, before they actually had the quote specifically referring to, this guy used to call himself a socialist, and then they edited that out. There was the phrase of this individual had, quote, I think it was strong views on gun issues, was how they described it. Which, as you say, Noah, that is so vague. What does that mean? Strong views on gun issues. And I remember thinking whenever I saw that, he must have liked gun control, because if it had been the opposite, then there wouldn't have been some vague phrase about strong views on gun control. It would have been this student, wrote adamantly about his right to keep and bear arms. And there would have not been any sort of vagueness at all.
Yeah, there are very few Joe Manchins out there, even in high school, I would imagine.
That's true. Although now I'm thinking about a segment of Affluenza, if we want to talk about Joe Manchin.
Of course.
He does own
the
a
latest
yacht.
storage.
Yeah. So, given that Gabe Mailer, as you say, has pointed out 12 times since 2009 that we have seen examples like this, I doubt this is going to go away. And I'm glad that we are noting this, at least, because the other aspect is, look, no, I don't know about you, but in the middle of a breaking news situation, I don't necessarily want to spend my time pushing back against this sort of stealth editing at the time. I want to know really what are the facts. I want to know what is the breaking news out of there. When do we push back against this type of stuff?
Well, when it occurs, ideally, there's nothing justified about these actions. And if the shoe was on the other foot, if we were talking about a reflexive impulse in the press to blame liberals for violent actions, it would be a cosmic injustice worthy of a national conversation and a congressional investigation. There's a real double standard here that exists. And yes, a double standard is a standard nonetheless, but it is one that should never be accepted, and it should be pushed back against as forcefully as possible immediately, because there's no justification for something like this. And to create the impression amongst editors like this individual at the Denver Post, who believes she can get away with sanitizing her own work or the quotes of a source, which is unethical, just purely unethical, and would get you reprimanded in J school, needs to be pushed back upon and as forcefully as you possibly can. It is very offensive, and I don't have any regrets going after individuals who want to change the facts of a story in order to create a political impression that they believe is justified, whether or not the facts support it.
Yeah. So, do you think that this was that the editor's motivation? You think that it was just, look, was it a matter of this student not knowing the concept of socialism, or was it, again, the idea that, as you point out, the idea that the socialist label was more likely to be picked up in conservative blogs, and then, you got you're giving rhetorical ammunition to those crazy right-wingers?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just suggesting a couple of things that maybe would have motivated her to do this. I don't know what her thinking was. It was wholly unjustified. I'm just creating devil's advocate's positions here for her to justify what are wholly unjustified actions, giving her the benefit of the doubt. But none of those are exculpatory. All of that is still damning, and it's not her place to judge whether or not this is an appropriate label for a student to use. Her job is quite simply to put the facts out there. If this was an opinion column, we'd be talking about something else, but this is breaking news and information regarding a national event. So there really is no justification for that. And if she was thinking, well, I don't want to give the right any further ammunition to attack leftists, that's even more inappropriate and completely and wholly unethical. So whatever her justification was, it's no justification at all.
All right, Noah, thank you again, sir, for coming on the program. It's great talking to you.
Thank you, Cam. Appreciate it.
Noah Rothman joining us from Mediaite.